Hey, I'm Hollis, and welcome to the Friendly Fangirl podcast, where I nerd out on the films, shows, and video games that I encounter every week. Be sure to follow this podcast, and please follow my Twitter and blog at Hollis Films to follow my journey experiencing the entertainment industry's greatest stories. Beware of spoilers, you have been warned. Final Fantasy XII is one of the Final Fantasy games that always stood out in my mind. Right before 15 came out, way back in the day, I watched Let's Plays of all the Final Fantasy main titles, and 6, 10, and 12 were definitely the ones that I gravitated towards the most. I've recently revisited the game. A lot of Final Fantasies have been releasing on the Switch, and since I've gone from a PlayStation main to a Nintendo main over the last year or so, I really wanted to decide which Final Fantasy to get. These games are just so super long, and I can only commit to one, and yeah, I think I'll end up with 12. First of all, I'm a Baltier stan. I mean, he's a pirate. He's also an extremely classy guy. You get the feeling he comes from money, but he's leaned into his charismatic Slytherin side to rebel against society by becoming a sky pirate, which is essentially his actual backstory. I also love Gideon Emery's voice in the English translation of the character. Bosch is the character that I found most interesting. His story about being mistaken as the Kingslayer when it was actually his evil twin brother leads to an interesting dynamics with the other characters, as well as within the world. He's on this journey to find redemption and to right the wrongs that he failed to prevent all those years ago. Ash is on this quest that presents to her a justice versus revenge story arc, which is really interesting because she was the Daenerys of her story, the queen we needed. There are times when she has to internally battle this idea of justice versus revenge, and kind of faces, like, what Dumbledore says, sometimes we have to choose between what is right and what is easy, and that's the moral of Ash's story as she tries to free her kingdom. In terms of gameplay, I still have to actually play it to fully understand it, but from what I know about the gameplay, I'm definitely a fan. I'm 100% someone who prefers real-time versus turn-based action, and 12 has that aspect for me. I enjoy the license board concept that specifically comes with the Zodiac version. I think the class system that comes with that is great and is also a very unique aspect of gameplay. I can only compare it to the Spirit Link boards from Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance, which unapologetically love that game. I would also say the Gambit system is a very advanced version of a feature you also see in Kingdom Hearts. Like in the main KH games, you can set up if you want Donald to heal only you, or just himself, or other party members. 12 takes it like 20 steps further. Like some Gambits you can set up as use Cure when a party member is at this % of health, or use this spell when a party member is poisoned, use this attack to the enemy with the most HP, those kinds of things. And it really brings back the tactical side of Final Fantasy, as I can see this getting out of hand if you use the same gambit on multiple party members. Now, the one thing that I love more than anything is the aesthetic of the game. It puts the fantasy in Final Fantasy purely through world design and themes and the Game of Thrones thing going on. I mean, 7 is phenomenal, but I've always found 7 to be more sci-fi than fantasy, you know? Same with 13. I feel like 12 really nailed this medieval war story beautifully, and the supernatural elements are not in our faces too much, but they're still there, keeping the overall conflict grounded and very, very human as compared to, like, 10, where the big bad was Sin. Although, ironically, I do get Star Wars vibes every once in a while. I mean, Baltier is basically Han Solo, and Vaughn's home city of Rabanastre is literally the one in Naboo in Phantom Menace, you know, where Padme is from. Yeah. So let me know what your favorite Final Fantasy is in the comments below. So House of the Dragon has come and gone, and while I have been convinced to add it to my list to watch at some point in the future, I have yet to watch it fully. However, this show has made me think about Game of Thrones, a lot. Game of Thrones has been on my mind, so I'm gonna say that is the show of the week. Game of Thrones was unlike anything that has ever been seen on television. The story, the characters, the world, the music, the costumes, the filming locations, the filming process. I mean, this has already gone down as one of the greatest shows in history. I know a lot of people are attached to the idea that 7 and 8 were just awful and ruined the show, but I feel like people forget that 1 through 6 was just perfection. To me, the episode of the Red Wedding all the way until the season 6 finale where Cersei takes the Iron Throne and Daenerys sails to Westeros, between those two moments, the show was nothing short of art, and I feel like those are the moments that people need to remember when they look back on Game of Thrones instead of hating how it ended, because 90% of the rest of the show was good. It's just that 10% that was not. When I first watched seasons 7 and 8, I watched it after the series finale, and I did follow spoilers just because I wanted to know what was happening. So I went into 7 and 8 knowing everything, and I have since rewatched the series after that, and I watched it carefully, guys. Basically Daenerys and Jaime ruined Game of Thrones. A lot of people complain that season 8 there were a lot of plot points that came from nowhere, and with Jaime I definitely agree. However, with Daenerys, there were definitely hints which just wasn't explained well, so it felt out of nowhere. I mean, I still enjoyed 7 and 8, but I do understand why they get hated on. But I do want people to know that seeds were planted at least season 7, if not earlier. So, yeah. A story is only as good as its characters, and despite everything that happened in the end, Game of Thrones had no shortage of great characters, and the characters, as many as there were the most important aspect of the show, and I've got some feelings to share about it. So, first controversial character, Daenerys, the mother of dragons. I believed in her. I really did, like everyone else. I've talked about her in a previous podcast. I still have a huge crush on her. You know, I feel like season 1 through 6 was really awesome development and built her up to be a powerhouse. But once she set sail to Westeros, you could see the cracks. It's too complicated. It's really too complicated to really go into detail, because I think I've talked about her in the podcast. I think what happened to her was a result of the books not being finished. But I definitely feel like her being the final villain would have been a good idea if that's what was depicted more. Because as a ruler, you know, with her dragons, she used a lot of violence to get to where she was. But they spent so much time on developing her as a just queen that we thought she'd be able to handle taking over the Iron Throne, and she just couldn't, and she snapped, and everyone was angry at her. But I still love her. I still think she was a great character. When the books come out in 50 years, I would love to read more on the series of events that happened, and maybe we can learn a little bit more. Now, the Lannisters. Whew, sheesh. Okay, first of all, Tyrion. He had such a great story arc from start to finish. He was one of the characters that just had a flawless story. He rose from shame and scrutiny, and even though he was ashamed of some of his mistakes here and there, he was the real hero, or at least one of them. Peter Dinklage carried the show on his shoulders and never gave up on the opportunity to give a great performance. The same could be said about Lena Headey. Cersei is one of my favorite villains of all time. Even if she was immoral and evil with every breath, I cheered for her until the end. She was one of those people that I just loved to hate. And she also had some dimension to her. I wouldn't say she was purely evil. She was a great villain. She was very interesting and cold and calculating, and it was just fun to watch her. Her death was dumb. I think she deserved far worse than collateral damage. I will never understand the purpose of the Hound telling Arya to not kill her, because she already had her revenge on Walder Frey, and that was epic. So what would have been taken from her if she lost Cersei? I mean, it's Arya Stark. At this point, she could have made it out. I'm just saying. She could have made it. But Jaime. He was probably all of our favorite characters at some point. But he was a fool. He was in the right place, and he should have just never gone to King's Landing. Of course, he was following Tyrion's advice, and if it weren't for Daenerys, he would have made it, of course. I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a bird outside my window. Yeah, I'm sure there was better reasoning as to why he went back for Cersei, but the execution was poor, so it just wasn't really well written, and I feel like Jaime died for no reason. Jaime, I think the actor said something like, oh, he was just trying to defend his queen. I'm just like, I think the thing is that when he abandoned her to help the people at the wall at Winterfell with the whole Night King and everything, we thought he learned his lesson, but he didn't. And that's why everyone's angry. And I can forgive the Daenerys thing, but it's the Jaime thing that I cling on to that I cannot stand. Of course, there are many other characters that I can gush about. I mean, from Davos to Bronn to Tormund to Sir Brienne of Tarth. May she forever be I was gonna say I was gonna say a bad word. I shouldn't. But a Bamf. You know what I'm thinking. Brienne had one of the most fitting endings to her story. I couldn't have pictured a better ending for Brienne. But I really want to highlight the Starks. The show started with the Stark family, and it ended with the Stark family. I mean, I remember during the show, there was so much debate about who the main character was. I mean, people did math. They counted the pages in the book and the minutes on screen, who is the main character? And to me, the Stark family was the main character. I mean, Sean Bean showed up in season 1 and helped introduce the world of Westeros, and after that, it was his kids, just the center of it all. Sansa started as a brat and developed into a wise and strong woman and queen. Bran is the three-eyed raven and is now king of the 6 kingdoms. I mean, he was weird, but he was important. Arya Stark. Oh my gosh. She was this rambunctious little girl who was just so energetic, did not want to become a lady. She wanted to defy the roles of women from the start. And she grew up to be a pirate assassin, essentially. She survived the destruction of King's Landing and became a world explorer. The last thing we see of her, she's on a ship with her assassin skills, ready to see what is west of Westeros. She is an assassin pirate assassin. She's literally Edward Kenway. And I think that's awesome. Literally the best character. If there's any character better than Tyrion himself, it's Arya. She's probably my favorite character. Best story arc from start to finish. I feel like I said that about Tyrion, but I lied. I meant that for Arya. I mean, come on. Out of all the endings, hers was the most satisfying. And she's definitely one of the top 3 best characters on the show. And Jon Snow, my gosh, whether he was the bastard son, or King of the North, or rightful heir to the Iron Throne, he always tried to do what was right, no matter what. He was a hero, a war hero who fought with honor and courage. He fought so that people could live. He didn't fight so that he could win some sort of silly throne or crown or title. He did it for the good of the people. His story was one heck of a story. And there's really nothing more to say to that. But if Ned Stark lived to see where his surviving children / nephew, or if he lived to see where they ended up, he'd be really proud. Yeah, the main character is the Starks, and I stand by that. So, do I recommend the show? Absolutely. Not every episode was perfect. Not every season was perfect. But if you watch the show with the Starks in mind, like if you have them in mind as the main characters, you go from episode 1 to series finale thinking about the Stark family. The credits roll in that final episode. You're probably feeling satisfied like I did. It's an exhausting tale. There's a lot going on, so you really gotta be committed, and you gotta really pay attention just because there's literally like 100 people you gotta know, and it's a complicated game of chess. Honestly, it's worth to watch at least once. I've seen it twice now, and I'd love to watch it a 3rd time. I mean, even with the final seasons, I wouldn't say I wouldn't change it for anything in the world, but I enjoy it for what it is. Even if it could be better, it could have also been worse. But I am really happy with my Game of Thrones experience, and, someday I'll catch House of Dragons, and hopefully I'll be satisfied with that experience too. The producers. Some weeks ago, there was a lot of posts on social media standing against anti-Semitism and, standing with our Jewish friends. And yeah, any discrimination is ridiculous, unnecessary, and causes only hate and problems that we don't need. But I'm not here to talk about politics. I'm here to say that I watched the source material to a Broadway musical about Hitler. Yeah, okay. I love Hitler in entertainment. Do not take that out of context, please. Dark humor is just my thing, and I shouldn't have to be sorry for enjoying black comedy. If you don't enjoy playing Cards Against Humanity, we cannot be friends. Anyways, yeah, he was one of the worst human beings in human history and is for sure burning in hell right now, and that's awesome. But Hitler in movies or shows, there's just something fun about that. I mean, look up Downfall Hitler parodies. Those are some of my favorite videos on YouTube. And have you seen Jojo Rabbit? I can go on. Jeez. Besides, every time Hitler does appear on our screens, he's either an idiot we enjoy laughing at, or a villain that is taken down in a classic battle of good versus evil. That being said, Springtime with Hitler is a song that exists and has been performed on stage and on screen, and seriously, how does it exist and why is it so fantastic? I heard this song on a Broadway radio station once, and I was floored. I had to research it immediately, and the producers is what I found. I came to the original film to see Gene Wilder help bring the story to life for the first time. This 1967 film it's an experience. The script flows kind of weirdly. The comedy is also hit or miss. I don't like the dialogue too much. It's just weird. But if you stick through it, after the first act, it does become more and more enjoyable as it goes on. I think the auditions was a turning point in the film. That was comedy. They really got to me. I mean, it's just bizarre hearing someone say, dancing Hitlers wait over here and singing Hitlers come this way. That's just a sentence I never thought I'd hear ever in my life. Then Dick Shawn shows up as LSD with exotic boots and a can of soup on a necklace and just totally making a statement with his outfit, and gave a mesmerizing performance. I was dead. This 60s cult classic is one that you may or may not enjoy, but one thing is for sure, the musical adaptation slaps. Though I should probably not sing
Springtime for Hitler and Germany
in public. I swear, guys, I'm not a Nazi. I just enjoy laughing at them. Last month, Robbie Coltrane passed away. As a Harry Potter fan, this death broke me a little bit. Helen McCrory's death last year made me really sad, as she died way too young. But in terms of Potter deaths, I think Robbie Coltrane's is the most impactful since Alan Rickman's passing several years ago, which we're all still grieving, actually. The Superstar Award goes to Robbie Coltrane. So, yeah, I've watched several videos and scanned several articles, and when it comes to Robbie Coltrane's career, everyone brings up literally the same 5 roles and projects out of the 100 credits that are in his name. I guess I'll remain consistent with that. But let's just get started from the beginning. Anthony Robert McMillan is Scotland-made. Yes, sir. After a normal life in childhood, Robbie entered his 20s, diving into an acting career after adopting his stage name, Robbie Coltrane. He got started in comedic theater with a play called The Slab Boys in 1978. This was followed with minor roles in projects such as Death Watch, Subway Riders, The Supergrass, Absolute Beginners, and Mona Lisa. He was also a star in the comedy sketch show Al Fresco, which actually no one is talking about for some reason. It's one of the first major roles, not just for Coltrane, but for Emma Thompson, Hugh Laurie, and Stephen Fry. 4 British legends got a major step up through this show, and no one is talking about it. I know there's only a dozen episodes, but this was significant in all 4 of their careers. Dang, talk about great beginnings. However, everyone seems to either credit Tutti Frutti and or Blackadder III as his great breakout performances. Tutti Frutti was a 6-episode miniseries about rock and roll that also featured fellow Al Fresco star Emma Thompson. And while Coltrane was only in 1 episode of Blackadder, his performance was still quite memorable and beloved, to the point where clips of his role have been shown quite a lot in memoriam. Coltrane would also appear as a spirit in Blackadder's Christmas Carol special in 1988. The 90s saw the peak of Robbie's career when he starred as Edward Fitzgerald in 3 seasons of Cracker. This, aside from Hagrid, has been brought up as Robbie's most iconic role and best performance. Robbie was nominated for and won the BAFTA for Best Television Actor for all 3 seasons of the show. This series is definitely added to my list, and I will for sure watch it someday. The 90s also saw Robbie as a fun James Bond character, Valentine Zukovsky, in the Pierce Bronson era films, GoldenEye, and The World Is Not Enough. Before I address the half-giant in the room, Robbie Coltrane remained active through his time in the 21st century. He had roles in films like Van Helsing, From Hell, and Ocean's 12. He provided voices to animated films such as Tales of Despero, Gooby, Arthur Christmas, and Pixar's Brave. His final major role was the television miniseries National Treasure in 2016, which saw Robbie nominated for another BAFTA award for his performance. When Robbie Coltrane passed away in October, there was one role that he was remembered for the most. One character whose picture was spammed across the internet literally everywhere. Rubeus Hagrid, keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts. This is undeniably Robbie Coltrane's most iconic role. J.K. Rowling herself handpicked him for the role of Hagrid. Sorry. When I read the books, his voice, it's his voice that I hear just because he really embodied the character that perfectly. I mean, Robbie couldn't have said it better himself in his read-in video. Just like everyone else, I will share that clip that everyone cried about because this is what we remembered, and this is all what we all thought about the day he left this earth. And this is what we kept thinking about as we remembered Robbie Coltrane.
The legacy of the movies is that my children's generation will show them to their children. So you could be watching it in 50 years' time. Easy. I'll not be here, sadly, but but Hagrid will. Yes.
That's it for this week. Again, follow me on Twitter or leave a comment, and let me know what you've been fangirling over this week. Thank you for joining me, and I'll talk to you again next week.